Good morning. Today we're going to talk about abusive men. Why does he do that? And then I'm going to make another video about people pleasers because these two have one thing in common, which is a lack of boundaries. And to start off this discussion, I want to go again over this grid that I've talked about in prior videos. It's the relationship grid that Terry Real designed. He's a therapist, and it requires a little explaining, so just bear with me because this is important. Okay, this is the relationship grid, and on either side we have boundaries. So you can be boundaryless, or you have no boundaries at all. And you can be walled off, where you're just behind a wall. Ideally, you're in the center where you have healthy boundaries. And a boundary is really just you noticing, you taking care of your own health and your own emotions, where you're not, and being respectful of other people as well. A boundary is taking responsibility not just for how people treat me and what I let in, but also in how I treat other people and what I let out. Okay, so if you ask me if I want to lend you money and I don't want to, a healthy boundary would be saying, no, I don't want to. Whereas an unhealthy boundary would be, if your spouse wants to talk to you about something and you say, no, I never want to discuss this, that's being walled off. Also, yelling at someone or calling them names or belittling them is also a lack of boundaries, because we're responsible what comes out of us as well and how we treat other people. That's boundaries. Now, on this axis, we have shame versus grandiosity. This is self-esteem. So a grandiose person is going to think that they're more important than everyone else. And a shame-filled person is going to feel less than anyone else. And ideally, you want to be in the middle with healthy self-esteem. But don't worry, because we all kind of go through these different quadrants when we're upset or triggered or having a bad day. But it's just to be aware of this and try to be in the center. And just know that some people are generally more in one of these quadrants, and the more you get away from the center, the more unhappy you will be in your relationships, and the worse you will be treating the people you're in relationship with. So I'm going to go over these quadrants one at a time. A boundaryless person is love dependent. So they're going to get love either by being very controlling and abusive. They're going to use control and anger to get love. They're going to belittle you, stalk you. Think about someone like O.J. Simpson, who murdered his wife. Definitely way up here. Grandiose, entitled, with no boundaries. No respect for other people. And then down here, boundaryless, shame-filled, is someone who's desperate for love and manipulates for love. That's the codependent woman, typically, that we think of, who puts up with being abused or always cheated on. Or we think of Johnny Depp down here and Amber Heard up here. How can I get you to love me? What can I do so you don't get upset? What can I do so you don't drink so much? Please love me. The refrain here is, please love me. And the refrain up here is, I will make you love me. And both of these people are love dependent. Okay, so you want to get more in the center. Now let's go over here on this other side of walled off. These are love avoidant people. And a lot of this comes from their childhood, actually. But I'm not going to get into that in this video. So on the walled off people, you have the walled off person that's one up. This is the person who's like, well, I'm not going to talk about this with you. They're passive aggressive. They avoid dealing with things. They don't want to be bothered with you. They're indifferent to the pain that you might be feeling. They are afraid of intimacy and connection. They're walled off. And then you have the walled off, one down, shame-filled position. That's someone who's just withdrawing and depressed. I'm not even going to try. I'm not going to engage with you. I don't even want to try. They're helpless, depressed, and these people are avoidant. And of course, you can be anywhere in these quadrants and you can move around. Like you might be usually like in a one down position, but when you get upset, you get grandiose. Now, the reason I started with this is because in this book, Why Does He Do That? I read this book a few years ago and I just wanted to pull it out again today because we often think that these abused men were abused as children. They just can't help it. They're just emotional. But what it comes down to in the fact is that they're grandiose, entitled. Abusive men has nothing to do with their childhood. It has to do with them kind of getting away with being spoiled brats and thinking they're better than everyone else. So men who are abusive are in this quadrant. And the women who are with them are here. Or if you're a man who is being abused, you're down here in the one down position, and your abuser's in the one up, grandiose, boundaryless position, because it's a lack of boundaries to treat another person with disrespect, whether it's your child or your spouse or your pet. And some people might not realize that they grew up really entitled because as kids, when they did bad things, they weren't punished. They were allowed to get away with it. Terry Real says, the way that we act is either what happened to us, what we saw other people do, or what we were allowed to get away with and no one stopped us. So, I'm just going to read you a few things from this book in case you're interested in abusers. And typically it's a man who's physically abusive, so that's why he uses he. The author of this book, his name is Lundy Bancroft. As of the writing of this book, he had spent 15 years specializing in domestic abuse and the behavior of abusive men. He's the author of When Dad Hurts Mom and The Batterer as Parent. He's written articles for the New England Journal of Medicine. He is the former co-director of Emerge, the nation's first program for abusive men. And let me see, when this book was published, in 2002. So he may have written other books since then. I haven't looked him up. But I'm just going to read to you the myths about abusers. He was abused as a child. These are myths. His previous partner hurt him. He abuses those he loves the most. He holds in his feelings too much. He has an aggressive personality. He loses control. He is too angry. He is mentally ill. He hates women. He is afraid of intimacy and abandonment. He has low self-esteem. His boss mistreats him. He has poor skills in communication and conflict resolution. There are as many abusive women as abusive men. His abusiveness is as bad for him as for his partner. He is a victim of racism. He abuses alcohol or drugs. I'm going to look at question number 1, the myth number 1, abused as a child, and number 14, there are as many abusive women as men. But if you want to read more of these, you can get this book. Multiple research studies have examined the question of whether men who abuse women tend to be survivors of childhood abuse. and the link has turned out to be weak. Other predictors of which men are likely to abuse women have proven far more reliable. Notably, men who are violent towards other men are often victims of child abuse, but the connection is much less clear for men who assault women. A bad childhood doesn't cause a man to become an abuser. If abusiveness were the product of childhood emotional injury, abusers could overcome their problem through psychotherapy. But it is virtually unheard of for an abusive man to make substantial and lasting changes in his pattern of abusiveness as a result of therapy. In fact, it typically gets worse as he uses therapy to develop new excuses for his behavior, more sophisticated arguments to prove that his partner is mentally unstable, and more creative ways to make her feel responsible for his emotional distress. They use the childhood abuse story as a way to pull heartstrings. And he manipulates because by focusing on what his mother did wrong, he gets to blame a woman for his mistreatment of women. This explanation can also appeal to the abused woman herself, since it makes sense out of his behavior and gives her someone safe to be angry at, since getting angry at him always seems to blow up in her face. So that goes on and on. Now let's look at the other myth, because I have said that women are also mean to men. But when women are mean to men, it's less likely that it's physically abusive. So let's go into this one. There are just as many abusive women as abusive men. Abused men are invisible because they're ashamed to tell. That's a myth. There certainly are some women who treat their male partners badly, berating them, calling them names, attempting to control them. The negative impact on these men's lives can be considerable. But do we see men whose self-esteem is gradually destroyed through this process? Do we see men whose progress in school or in their careers grinds to a halt because of the constant criticism and undermining? Where are the men whose partners are forcing them to have unwanted sex? Where are the men who are fleeing to shelters in fear for their lives? How about the ones who try to get to a phone to call for help, but the women block their way or cut the phone line? The reason we don't generally see these men is simple. They're rare. I don't question how embarrassing it would be for a man to come forward and admit that a woman is abusing him. But don't underestimate how humiliated a woman feels when she reveals abuse. Women crave dignity just as much as men do. If shame stopped people from coming forward, no one would tell. Even if abused men didn't want to come forward, they would have been discovered by now. Neighbors don't turn a deaf ear to abuse the way they might have 10 or 20 years ago. Now, when people hear screaming, objects smashing against walls, loud slaps landing on skin, they call the police. Among my physically abusive clients, nearly 1/3 have been arrested as a result of a call to the police that came from someone other than the abused women. If there were millions of cowed, trembling men out there, the police would be finding them. Abusive men commonly like to play the role of victim, and most men who claim to be battered men are actually the perpetrators of violence, not the victims. So, men can be abused by other men, however, and women can be abused by women, sometimes through means that include physical intimidation or violence. So, that is that. Now I'm going to go on to the next section, which is the abuser's mentality. Okay? And I think what really shows this well is a diagram he has in here of how, which has a little bit to do with entitlement. Now, this is how rights should be seen in a couple or in a family. You have the man and the woman as the adults having equal rights, and then the child as having fewer rights. And, this goes along with the parenting too, where a child has fewer rights, but also fewer responsibilities, less freedom, less rights, less responsibilities. And as we grow into adults, we develop more rights, more freedom, and more responsibilities. They kind of go hand in hand. Okay, this is what ideally you have. But an abuser is like this. Okay, the man sees himself as having more rights and more privileges, but not responsibilities. And the woman and the children have much less. It's an example of extreme entitlement. The abusive man is controlling and entitled. He thinks he's more important and other people don't matter. Okay? And this is deeply ingrained through the way he's socialized and brought up, and what he's seen in his home, and how he believes relationships should be. These guys are very hard to change. When you're dealing with someone who's controlling or manipulative, the best thing you can do, ladies, is run. But the problem is that these codependent women in the one down, please love me position think this is normal because they saw that in their homes growing up, and they think they feel pity for him because I can love him. How can I love you into treating me better? And that's why they are signing up unknowingly to be abused, because they think their love will change him. And it won't, because he's entitled and controlling. Okay, so reality number one is he is controlling. All right? Here's an example of a controlling guy. My client Glenn arrived angry and agitated for his group session. He said, my wife started yelling at me on Friday afternoon, and then she left for the whole weekend and took our son with her. She really hurt me, so I decided to hurt her too. I wanted to go after something that was really important to her to show what it was like. She had been working for a week on this college paper that she had to hand in on Monday, and she left it sitting right on top of her dresser, just asking for it. So I tore it up into little pieces. Then I ripped up a bunch of pictures of the three of us, and I left it in a nice pile on the bed for her to come home to. I think she learned something from that. Wow. Now, he was remarkably honest in about his thought process, because he felt justified. He believed in his right to control his partner's actions. He would not accept defiance. He considered it his right to punish his wife in the most severe way he could think of if she took steps to recover ownership of her life. He talked proudly of how he had allowed her various freedoms while they were together, as if he were her parent, and defended his right to remove her privileges when he thought the time had come. Control comes in many different forms. A man who doesn't allow his wife to speak to anyone without his permission. Ordering her to change her clothes in the morning if he didn't approve of her outfit, etc. So there's more about control there. And a lot of examples. Oh, one more thing about control. When a man starts my program, he often says, I'm here because I lose control of myself sometimes. I need to get a better grip. I always correct him. Your problem is not that you lose control of yourself, it's that you take control of your partner. In order to change, you don't need to gain control over yourself. You need to let go of control of her. Okay, reality number 2 of why men abuse women is he feels entitled, and that's the diagram I was showing you. Entitlement is the abuser's belief that he has a special status and that it provides him with exclusive rights and privileges that do not apply to his partner. The attitudes that drive abuse can largely be summarized by this one word. Let's see, what is this one word? Entitlement. Yes, entitlement. Not only are the rights of his partner and children diminished, with some abusers, those little circles disappear altogether. They disappear altogether. But his rights are greatly inflated. My fundamental task as a counselor is to get the abusive man to expand his perception of his partner's and children's rights to their proper size, and to shrink his view of his own rights down to where it belongs. The abusive man awards himself all kinds of rights to physical and emotional caretaking, having his sexual needs met, freedom from accountability. I don't know if I should go into examples. This is just like really bizarre. Physical caretaking. That's the focus of the more traditionally minded abuser. Okay, this is an example of entitlement, guys. Physical caretaking. He expects his partner to make dinner for him the way he likes it, look after the children, clean the house, and perform an endlessly continuing list of additional tasks. He sees her essentially as an unpaid servant. He grouches. I work my butt off all day, and when I come home, I expect a little peace and quiet. Is that too much to ask for? He does nothing around the house, and if she doesn't fulfill her myriad household responsibilities to his satisfaction, he doles out harsh criticism. Although this style of abuser may seem out of date, he is alive and well. We hear these guys in the manosphere, you all. Okay. Interwoven with the abuser's overvaluation of his own work is the devaluation of his partner's labor. They grumble, I don't know what she does all day. She spends her time watching soap operas, even though she doesn't. And if she works outside the home, and few families can get by on one income, he insists her job is easy compared to his. So, okay, let's go into emotional caretaking. This can be even more important than homemaking services to the modern abuser. Abusive men often hide their high emotional demands by cloaking them as something else. For example, my client Bert would be furious if his girlfriend Kirsten didn't get off the phone as soon as he came in the door. His excuse to tear into her would be all the money she's wasting on the phone bill when she knows we can't afford it. But we noticed that the issue only arose when he wanted her attention. An abuser can seem emotionally needy. You can get caught in a trap of catering to him, trying to fill a bottomless pit. But he's not so much needy as entitled, because no matter how much you give him, it will never be enough. Sexual caretaking means that he considers it his partner's duty to keep him sexually satisfied. He may not accept having his sexual advances rejected, yet turn her down whenever he feels like it. Even her pleasure exists for his benefit. If she doesn't reach orgasm, for example, he may resent her for it, because he wants the pleasure of seeing himself as a great lover. Not all abusive men have great interest in sex. Some are too busy with outside relationships or use substances that diminish their sex drive. A few are gay, using their female partners for window dressing. Some of my clients can feel attracted to a woman only as part of a domination fantasy. These style of abusers lose interest in sex if his partner starts to assert herself as an equal human being deserving of respect, or he begins to coerce or assault her sexually. In fact, he wants sex on his terms or not at all. Deference as a form of entitlement refers to the abuser's entitlement to have his tastes and opinions treated as edicts. No one is allowed to disagree with him. And the last one, freedom of accountability, means that the abusive man considers himself above criticism. If his partner attempts to raise her grievances, she is nagging or provoking. He believes he should be permitted to ignore the damage his behavior is causing, and he may become retaliatory if anyone tries to get him to look at it. Okay. So, the abuser's outlook on the woman's anger. The abusive man's problem with anger is almost the opposite of what is commonly believed. The reality is your abusive partner doesn't have a problem with his anger, he has a problem with your anger. One of the basic human rights he takes away from you is your right to be angry with him. And I want to say something important about anger, guys. It is so important to let your children be angry with you. Like I always told my kids and my grandkids, you can be mad at me. You can't hit me or yell at me. You can express your anger. But some kids are never allowed to be angry, and these abusive men do not allow anyone to be angry with them. But they're allowed to be angry. And it's okay for people to be angry, but again, in a boundaried fashion. I'm angry with you. I don't like this. That's important for people to be able to express. But the abuser will not let anyone be angry with him. He is the only one allowed to be angry. No matter how badly he treats you, he believes that your voice shouldn't rise and your blood shouldn't boil. The privilege of rage is reserved for him alone. When your anger does jump out of you, as will happen to any abused woman from time to time, he is likely to try to jam it back down your throat as quickly as he can. Then he uses your anger against you to prove what an irrational person you are. You may develop physical or emotional reactions to swallowing your anger. Okay, if you can't express your anger, you're going to develop depression, nightmares, emotional numbing, eating or sleeping problems. And then your partner will use this as an excuse to belittle you further and make you feel crazy. The reason he reacts so strongly to your anger is that he considers himself above reproach. And on some level, he senses there's power in your anger. And that means that you can hold on to your identity and resist him suffocating you. He tries to take your anger away in order to snuff out your capacity to resist his will. And he perceives your anger as a challenge to his authority, to which he responds by overpowering you with anger that is greater than your own. In this way, he ensures that he retains the exclusive right to be the one who shows anger. Now, another thing you have to realize about these guys, he isn't abusive because he's angry. He's angry because he's abusive. Okay, this goes more to the entitlement. Because he's entitled, he goes off being angry, and that's, again, a lack of boundaries. Disrespecting you is a lack of his ability to maintain proper boundaries. The abuser's unfair and unrealistic expectations ensure that his partner can never follow all the rules or meet all of his demands. The result is that he's frequently angry or enraged. Okay, reality number 3 about abusive men. So number 1, he's controlling. Number 2, he's entitled. Number 3, he twists things into the opposite. Twists things into his opposite. Number 4, he disrespects his partner and considers himself superior to her. Number 5, he confuses love and abuse. He says things like, I abuse her because I have such strong feelings for her. You abuse the people you love. Or, yeah, I told her she'd better not ever try to leave me. You have no idea how much I love this girl. That's fucked up, you guys. Reality number 6, he is manipulative. Here are some signs of manipulation. He changes his moods abruptly and frequently. He denies the obvious about what he's doing or feeling. He convinces you that he wants you to do what is best for you. He tries to get you to feel sorry for him. He gets you to blame yourself or blame other people for what he does. He uses confusion tactics and arguments. Reality number 7, he strives to have a good public image. If you're involved with an abusive man, you may spend a lot of your time trying to figure out what is wrong with you rather than what is wrong with him, because he gets along with other people and impresses them with his generosity, sense of humor, and friendliness. This is why you don't know the man who's abusive, because he's a charmer to the outside world. And so you might up wondering, what is it about me that sets him off? Other people seem to think he's great. Reality number 8, he feels justified. He says he externalizes responsibilities for his actions, believing that his partner makes him behave in abusive ways. She knows how to push my buttons. She wanted me to go off, and she knows how to make it happen. She pushed me too far. You expect me to just let her walk all over me? What would you do? And this is more entitlement, you guys. Reality number 9, abusers deny and minimize their abuse. Reality number 10, abusers are possessive. So, what abuse grows from attitudes and values, not feelings. The roots are ownership, the trunk is entitlement, and the branches are control. And then he goes into, a lot more details of what drives these people. But basically, a lot of them were just raised to be entitled abusers. They're entitled, controlling, possessive, mentally unwell. And ladies, it's usually the men who do this. And the reason women get into a relationship with these men is because they don't realize all these signs of abuse. I hope that you will get this book or send this video to anyone you know in an abusive relationship, because a lot of times these women blame themselves. They blame themselves because they're in the one down position and they don't even realize that they are lacking boundaries. Because if you have healthy boundaries, you're going to be like, that's not okay to treat me this way. I won't be in relationship with people who try to control me, manipulate me, possess me. Are entitled. But the abusers are here, but the women that get into a relationship with them are people pleasers. I've talked on a lot of my videos about men who are people pleasers. They end up with women who cheat on them, try to retaliate in a divorce by taking a lot of their money, turning their children against them, criticizing them, nagging them. The women who are full of contempt, they're not physically abusive like the men, but they have their own emotional type of abuse that they do to men. In order for someone to be abused, they have to be a people pleaser that signs up for the abuse. And a lot of times people don't realize that they're people pleasers and that they chose this person because they don't value themselves and they don't know healthy boundaries and they don't recognize abusive behavior. And they're conditioned to think, if I'm just nice enough, if I just love you enough, then you will change. If I just love you more, then you will love me. That is, you're setting yourself up to be abused. Someone is not going to love you more because you take their abuse. They're going to love you because that's who they are. So this is why, you guys, we all need to have healthy boundaries. And these entitled people, they don't change. These people are very hard to change. It's these people down here that have a shot at change. You that go for the abusive, people who mistreat you, abuse you, neglect you, don't want intimacy with you, ignore you, violate you. If you're attracted to people like that, you have a shot at changing by finding your boundaries and being willing to let go of people and be willing to lose people. You have to be willing to lose people. You have to be willing for someone to say bye. And that's what the people pleasers are deathly afraid of. They're afraid of abandonment. But they're clinging to the wrong people. So that's what you guys have to, wake up to. I'm not selling anything. I don't have any courses. I don't have like anything at all. I mean, I offer people that people can email me or talk to me if they want, but I'm not really selling anything. I just have fun, like sharing things that I've learned. And I myself have been on the entitled side and the people pleaser side. I grew up in a home where there were not that many boundaries, and I had to learn through my life to have better boundaries, that I can't go off on people, but mostly that I can't change a man into loving me. When I was married, I was mostly here and he was mostly here. I was here and he was here. And these people don't want to change. I was always trying to figure out how to improve the relationship. He didn't beat me, thank God, but he was walled off, emotionally walled off. Like, I don't want to deal with this. No. And I was like, well, how can I get this guy to change? How can I be okay with this, being so ignored all the time? How can I be okay with this? How can I get this guy to love me? In a way, honestly. And I had to leave him. That's why I left him. That's why women file for divorce. We're married to guys like this, and this is more common for men to be in this grandiose sphere. Now, if you're a guy who's a people pleaser, you're going to attract a woman who's a cheater, who takes all your money in the divorce. But why are we drawn to these people? That's what I'm trying to be like. We cannot be with these people who abuse us or neglect us. We have to have good boundaries and be willing to say, no, bye, So I hope you guys like this video. Again, the book is Why Does He Do That by Lundy Bancroft.